I always got along well with one of my cousins, Cole, who was the same age as me. The two of us were inseparable, always getting along and often found together both at school and outside of school when we were 12 years old and in 6th grade. I was hanging out with Cole on a Friday afternoon around the end of May, and we were excited for the weekend. We ended up at his house because he didn't live too far from me. At some point, my mom called to inform us that our grandfather was in the hospital, though his condition wasn't expected to be life-threatening. He was staying overnight for observation, and both my parents and Cole's parents planned to stay with him and our grandmother at the hospital. I was told I could stay at Cole's house that night with his 15-year-old brother, Hunter, who was responsible while our parents were out. This was fine with us. I got along well with Hunter, and he was never the bossy older brother type. Some of my other friends said they had to put up with siblings ordering them around, but we ordered pizza and enjoyed playing with his younger siblings, who were around 9 or so. There was a knock on the front door, and Cole went to answer it. I was somewhat curious about who it might be at that time of night, so I peeked from behind the door. They were two older people. They said they were from the city and were investigating reports of poor water pressure in the neighborhood. They asked Cole if his parents were home, and when Cole said they weren't, that's when we were told to tell strangers if our parents weren't home. The people then started asking a lot of questions about the water pressure inside the house, and if they could come in to check. Hunter came over at that moment and politely told them that the water pressure was fine, and that they might want to move on to check other houses in the neighborhood. They seemed reluctant to leave, but eventually they turned away and left, after Hunter started closing the door. After they left, we looked at each other and shrugged, but none of us really thought too much about it afterward, and we went back to doing what we were doing. Eventually, we decided to go to bed. Cole and Hunter shared a room, and we all agreed that I would sleep there with them, rather than crashing on the couch or something, so we could chat as we fell asleep. Hunter grabbed a sleeping bag from their camping gear for me, and when we got back to the bedroom, we all wore our underwear and cut-off pajamas. Then they got into their beds, and I crawled into the sleeping bag. After chatting for a bit about random things, we all eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up because I had to pee, so I quietly got out of my sleeping bag and went and did my business in the bathroom. On my way back to the bedroom, I heard something in the living room, which was at the other end of the house from the bedroom, specifically the bathroom I had used. I didn't pay much attention at the time, assuming it was probably Cole or Hunter, until I got back to the bedroom and realized they were both still there, trying not to panic. I woke them up and told them I thought there was someone in the house. They silently followed me, and as we entered the family room, we saw the two people from the night before there, and it was pretty clear they were robbing the place. One of them started moving towards us as he pulled out a menacing-looking knife. The three of us immediately ran to the front door somehow and managed to get it unlocked and open just in time, and we fled outside. Luckily, a police car was passing by at that moment, so we quickly flagged it down and told the officer about the two people in the house. The police requested backup, and within a few minutes, several more officers were there, and they began searching the house. They apprehended the two individuals. The police determined that the two had definitely entered through the window in the laundry room, which had a faulty latch, and they might have targeted this house specifically because they knew we, the kids, were alone. They might have thought that if we found them, we'd be easier to deal with than adults, which would add insult to injury. While we were waiting outside while the police searched the house, some neighbors came out to see what was happening, including some kids who went to the same school as me, including some who were in the 6th grade with us. It was at that moment that the three of us realized we had never had the chance to dress for our worst stereotype nightmare, having to stand outside in front of everyone wearing just our underwear for what felt like forever, before being allowed back in. When we returned to school on Monday, Cole and I had to endure more than just laughter and being the butt of every joke for the next few weeks until school ended for the summer. One night when I was 14 years old, I was at my friend Jared's house. He's my best friend, and I often go there. My parents knew I was there, but Jared's parents didn't know. My parents were out for the night, so we could do whatever we wanted. Of course, being kids, we stayed up all night playing Call of Duty in Jared's living room. Jared had a TV and gaming setup in his own bedroom, but his dad had just bought a new TV twice the size of Jared's, so we were excited to move the Xbox out there and just play in the living room. Jared asked me if I wanted to stay overnight. I had already thought that's what I was doing, so I was confused. I asked him if I should be there, and he just shrugged and said no. I sighed and decided to go along with it. A few hours passed, and we started to get tired. So Jared grabbed some blankets and 2 pillows for both of us. We decided to sleep upstairs in his room. So we played around for a bit before finally falling asleep. I'm a light sleeper, so it wasn't surprising when I woke up to the sound of music playing outside. I looked out and saw a car parked in the driveway. I thought it might be Jared's mom and dad, but when I woke Jared up, he told me it clearly wasn't and couldn't be one of their cars. The car was still running, but it seemed like there was no one inside. We tiptoed downstairs and found the front door wide open. At that point, my hair stood on end, and I knew we were really in trouble. Jared's room was far on the left side of the house, and was the last door on the left in the hallway, as we turned to go back to his room to grab our phones so we could call for help. But as we passed the bathroom, someone grabbed Jared and started running away. I swear I've never felt so scared in my life. Instead of grabbing my phone, I turned back and started chasing the guy. We were running through the living room, and Jared was struggling to get away from him, and the man started to get away from me. Then, as I ran out the front door down the stairs, I saw a creepy green and brown van parked on the side of the road in front of the house, and that's when I knew I had to do something fast before something life-changing happened. I grabbed a shovel that luckily was lying on the front yard near the flower bed, apparently left by Jared's dad outside unintentionally, and I managed to grab it in my embrace. Far from them, and I hit the man right in the side of the leg with all my might. They both immediately fell to the ground, and I helped Jared to his feet, and we ran back inside, and the man drove off in his van. The neighbors, seeing some commotion, had already called the police, and they arrived shortly after. As for the other car that was in the driveway, we're still not sure what it was. They told me it was a false alarm, and maybe he was cold or something and went out early. Or maybe he had nothing to do with it at all and it was purely coincidence. But I doubt the police will ever find either of the 2 suspects. And going to Jared's house since that day has felt weird to say the least. My name is Jonathan, and I'm 21 years old, and all of this happened when I was 16. What happened to my friend and me still haunts me and makes me afraid to talk about it even to this day. I was sleeping over at a friend's house one night. It was a Wednesday, and school was canceled early for the next day. I lived in Colorado when we were hit by a pretty crazy snowstorm in the winter, and this was one of those nights when the roads were so bad that school called for a snow day. So I was really glad to be staying at my friend Tyler's house, and we were just as happy as any 16-year-olds would be about not having school. Luckily, he lived in the same neighborhood as me, so all I had to do was pack my overnight bag and walk over there. It was only about a 5-minute walk, so it wasn't really a big deal. Of course, our parents had to work the next morning, so we would have the house to ourselves all day. The next day, we stayed up all night playing video games and goofing around, talking about the most random things you can imagine that teenage boys would talk about. Nothing weird happened that night. It was a normal night, but the next day is when things went sideways. I'd say it was around 11 o'clock in the morning. Tyler was making a sandwich in the kitchen, and I was using the bathroom when suddenly the doorbell rang. We both heard it loud and clear. Although at first we were scared, we weren't too worried about it. We lived in a relatively safe area, and bad things like home invasions and stuff like that almost never happened here. Tyler even made a joke about it possibly being Jehovah's Witnesses or something. I ran out of the bathroom and Tyler and I walked to the front door, and I told him if there's anyone out there, please help me. I'm in serious trouble right now. Our neighborhood is very quiet, and it's highly unlikely for someone to knock on our door. It's not something that happens often. Tyler looked out to try and see who it was, and it definitely wasn't Jehovah's Witnesses. With a guy wearing shorts and a t-shirt, he had short black hair and was probably about 5'10". "What's going on? Who are you?" I asked Tyler, not hitting my shoulder. He was clearly annoyed with me for letting ourselves be known. Music. Looking back, I really wished I didn't say anything because maybe the guy would have left and all this wouldn't have happened at all. Clearly not the smartest move on my part. I admit the guy outside then started banging on the door and pleading for us to let him in. We knew something was wrong, so obviously we didn't let him in. We ran downstairs and hid in the secret spot in the basement that Tyler showed me. He called his mom to let her know, and his mom said she was on her way home. Luckily, Macy Tyler's mom only worked about 5 minutes from home, so she would be there soon after Tyler hung up the phone. Even though we heard footsteps coming up, we knew it couldn't be his mom. "Buddy, what are we gonna do?" Tyler said. I told him that we just have to stay calm and wait it out, buddy. "Are you kidding me? What?" Tyler said. "All right, what do you suggest?" We did. Then I asked anything but sitting here, we have to run. He said, "I don't know how good of an idea that is, but I'm not going to sit here and hide alone." So I followed. We opened the door so slowly and walked through the basement towards the window we would try. I didn't understand how it works, but I knew it was the best option in reality. I raised both of my hands so I could give him a boost, and Tyler managed to open the window. He struggled for a minute, but eventually he could get outside. What about me? I thought in my heart. It's true when Tyler told me to grab the wooden coffee table in front of me and use it as a jumping stool to lift me up. Then he would pull me out. I jumped, and Tyler grabbed my arm and pulled with all his might. And somehow, I managed to get through the window and out as well. I had to catch my breath because I was panicking so hard that we didn't even realize the man was standing right behind us. He looked at us with the most unsettling stare you could imagine. He was a very strange person. Both of us ran towards the front of the house, and ironically, Tyler's mom was pulling into the driveway just as we reached the end of the driveway. The man followed us, but quickly ran the other way when he saw that we were with an adult Tyler's mom. He called the police, and we found out that the man was a fugitive who had just escaped from jail less than 24 hours before. The police showed us a photo of the man, and Tyler and I both confirmed to the officers that it was the same person if they catch him later that night, and now he's in jail, and maybe a long-term convicted sex offender, and likes to attack young boys, and specifically boys our age. He definitely had been stalking us and knew we were alone. It makes me sick how messed up some people are.